From a debunked story about his mother's death to fabrications about how he made his wealth, George Santos is truly a modern-day Mr. Ripley. But the deeper you dig into the congressman's backstory, the more lies you uncover. One of the first major fibs George Santos was called out on was his ever-changing heritage. An older version of his campaign website outright claimed he had Jewish lineage, reading, "His mother was born in Brazil to Belgian immigrants that fled the devastation of World War II Europe." His actions on the campaign trail also seemed to indicate that he was in touch with that aspect of his identity, as Santos attended Hanukkah parties and went to meetings of the Republican Jewish Coalition. However, as the New York Times first revealed, he actually isn't Jewish at all. Forward, an independent Jewish newspaper, confirmed the New York Times findings. The outlet scoured genealogy websites and immigration records and found nothing to corroborate Santos's story. Instead, they discovered that both of Santos's maternal grandparents as well as his mother had been born in Brazil. Additionally, they found that there was no mention of Jewish customs or major religious holidays on her social media accounts. But there were plenty of references to Catholic religious traditions. In an interview with the New York Post, Santos attempted to backtrack on his earlier claims, saying, "I never claimed to be Jewish. I am Catholic. Because I learned my maternal family had a Jewish background, I said I was Jew-ish." Despite the obvious discrepancy between what he told the Post and what was initially printed on his website, there's still no viable evidence that anyone on either side of Santos's family has Jewish heritage or has been a practicing Jew. The Jewish heritage question wasn't the only drama George Santos dragged his unexpected mother into. In a tweet he wrote on July 12, 2021, Santos claimed that his mother died as a result of the Twin Towers terrorist attacks, writing, "9/11 claimed my mother's life." Over the years, the congressman told the story of his mother's life over and over, claiming she worked her way up to becoming an executive at a major financial institution, a role that feasibly could have placed her in an office in the Twin Towers. The only thing about the story that ever changed was the ending. Occasionally, Santos would claim his mother lost her life that day. Other times, he'd say she made it out of the towers alive, but eventually died of complications later on.
My mom was a 9/11 survivor.
Unfortunately for Santos, victims advocacy organizations have told outlets like Rolling Stone that there are no employment records that would place his mother near the towers on that fateful day. Additionally, she never entered a victim's compensation claim or joined any of the numerous lawsuits surrounding the attacks. A researcher for the Seattle Times also found immigration documents in which Santos's mother said she had been out of the United States and living in Brazil since June 1999. According to that outlet, she never even worked in finance and wouldn't have even been in a position to be in New York's financial district at all that day. Instead, she was employed as a house cleaner and home aide in the city's outer boroughs. If George Santos's resume is to be believed, he held a number of significant positions at major financial firms. According to the document, Santos first worked at Citigroup before moving to Met Global Inc., then Goldman Sachs, and finally Linkbridge Investors. In the media, he always painted himself as a high-achieving and boundary-pushing employee, noting on his website that he was one of the youngest vice presidents in the industry. In reality, Santos wasn't a high-achieving, boundary-pushing employee. In fact, he wasn't even employed at many of the firms he listed. In December 2022, the politician admitted to the New York Post that he had never worked directly for Citigroup or Goldman Sachs, but had only tangentially been involved with them through his work at Linkbridge. According to the New York Times report, while working at Linkbridge, one of Santos's primary duties was arranging conferences, not managing investments. So how was Santos making all his money pre-Linkbridge? That remains up for debate. But Patch was able to confirm he worked at a Dish Network location in Queens as a bilingual customer service representative for at least a couple of years around 2011 and 2012. While he was supposedly busy working for these major financial institutions, George Santos claimed he was also adding to his wealth via a side hustle, renting and maintaining family-owned properties as a New York City landlord. In a tweet from February 8, 2021, the congressman claimed his family owned 13 properties around the city, and expressed frustration at not being able to collect rent on many of them thanks to COVID-related policies. Interestingly, Business Insider was unable to find any mention of NYC properties in the disclosure forms for Santos's campaign.
I made a mistake, and I think humans are flawed, and we all make mistakes.
According to George Santos, he wasn't just raking in the cash as a Wall Street tycoon and prolific landlord. He was also giving it away left and right. At multiple points in his campaign, the politician made a point of highlighting his charitable work. The old About Me section of his website lists 4 different ways in which he either currently was or previously had been involved in local charitable operations and national nonprofits. But there was one endeavor he always spoke about more than all the rest: Friends of Pets United. On his website, Santos said that the 501c had rescued 2,400 dogs, 280 cats, and had trapped, neutered, and released an additional 3,000 cats. However, the New York Times found no record with the IRS of a registered charity under that name. As if that wasn't enough, it seems that trivial fact didn't stop Santos from telling folks in his community the nonprofit existed and then proceeding to embezzle from it. In early 2023, a veteran came forward and told Patch that Santos had promised to help save his dying service dog, Sapphire. The men started a GoFundMe to pay for a necessary surgery for the animal. But then Santos, the veteran claimed, abruptly shuttered the campaign as soon as it hit $3,000 and disappeared with the money. As a result, Sapphire was unable to get the life-saving medical treatment and died in 2016. For his part, Santos told The Hill the man's claims were shocking and insane. Back to the money. The North Shore Leader, the first outlet to bring up questions about George Santos' stories, noted that he seemingly went from pauper to prince in the span of 2 years. According to the outlet, when he filed personal financial disclosures in 2020, they said he had no assets over $5,000. His income that year was only $50,000, a respectable number to be sure, but not large enough to increase his fortune by millions of dollars by 2022. In his most recent personal financial disclosures, Santos said he was worth $11 million. Santos himself has pointed to the DeVolder organization as the primary source of his fortune. The news website Semaphore described the DeVolder organization like this: DeVolder is in the capital introduction business, including deal building and specialty consulting for high net worth individuals. Part of the work also seems to include reselling luxury goods, like yachts and private planes, to wealthy clients. Suspiciously, however, the business has been opened and shuttered a number of times. Furthermore, Santos refuses to make public any documents related to his company, and he has never disclosed clients whose business has exceeded $5,000, which is against New York state law. Many people think it's more likely that some of Santos's wealth, if he actually has any, came from Harbor City Capital. Santos had acted as the Florida firm's New York regional director for years before the business was accused of being a massive Ponzi scheme.
Today I am a proud regional director of a $1.5 billion fund.
Santos has denied any knowledge of the company's wrongdoings, but many remain suspicious given his sudden financial solvency. There aren't just questions about George Santos's personal wealth, but about his campaign finances as well. For starters, his 2022 campaign finance form originally included a $600,000 personal loan, which implies it was money taken from his personal accounts and not money given to him by donors. However, Santos very recently admitted to the Daily Beast that the cash wasn't actually a personal loan, but failed to shed any light on the true source, which means it's possible that he has violated campaign finance laws and could wind up facing charges. Additionally, a significant portion of the money he raised was obtained through a mysterious, unregistered fund called Redstone Strategies. Because the fund isn't registered, there's no record of its donors, contributions, or spending. As the New York Times writes, this means there's no way to know if every cent of the money went towards campaign finances as it should have. Finally, a glimpse at his Federal Election Commission's documents reveals that Santos had dozens of expenditures that came in at $199.99, just a single penny below the figure at which the FEC requires candidates to keep receipts. These charges rang up at restaurants, drugstores, and ride-sharing services, and could imply that Santos was irresponsibly spending money and attempting to hide it from officials. If George Santos's campaign money turns out to have been ill-gotten and ill-spent, it wouldn't be the first time his actions have contrasted with his so-called morality. From the beginning, Santos has always been open about his identity as a gay man. He told USA Today, "I am openly gay, have never had an issue with my sexual identity in the past decade, and I can tell you and assure you I will always be an advocate for LGBTQ folks." Meanwhile, he's been incredibly vocal about his support for Ron DeSantis' Don't Say Gay bill, even posting a minute-long video touting the so-called benefits of the bill on his Facebook page. Additionally, new reports from outlets like CNN and Reuters have revealed that Santos performed as a drag queen in Brazil on multiple occasions. Pictures and video footage obtained by the news sites show the Republican dressed in a red dress and fully done up, and fellow performers recalled working alongside him when he went by the name Kitara. The issue many Americans have with Santos' stint as a drag queen isn't that he's been a part of these scenes, but that he's participated in these circles while attempting to limit fellow citizens' freedoms to do the same. There's just something so shady about claiming to support a group of people and even openly participating in their culture, while also working to ensure they remain second-class citizens with fewer rights than their counterparts. If you haven't picked up on it yet, George Santos is a bit of a trauma tourist. He loves inserting himself in devastating situations if it can get him a bit more sympathy or notoriety. Aside from claiming his mother was present for the 9/11 attacks, Santos has also claimed involvement in 2 other recent American tragedies.
I understand everybody wants to nitpick at me. I'm going to reassure this once and for all. I'm not a facade, I'm not a persona.
First, in an interview with WNYC, he claimed to have lost 4 employees in the 2016 Pulse nightclub shooting. He's never specified which company these individuals were employed at, but the New York Times expose found that none of the 49 victims appeared to have worked at any of the same companies Santos claims to have worked at. Additionally, a victims advocate told Click Orlando that, to her knowledge, no one employer lost more than 2 employees in the attack, which places further doubt on Santos's claims. Next, Santos claimed in a now-deleted interview to have been one of the first people in New York City to get COVID-19. In a clip of the conversation that was preserved on Twitter, he says that after he finally tested negative on March 26, 2022, doctors were saying it was a miracle he survived, as the immunodeficiency, acute bronchitis, and brain tumor he was also suffering from made his immune system much weaker than the average person's. However, the Daily Beast reports that there seem to be some inaccuracies in Santos' story, including the fact that he was making public appearances during the time he says he was hospitalized, and that he never really discussed his experience until then President Trump tested positive in October 2020.